Welcome to the England pod. We're all England all the time. We are here at Wembley, where we've just watched England beat Serbia by 2-0. 7 games in the World Cup qualifying campaign, 7 wins, 20 goals scored, 0 goals conceded, and with a little less jeopardy, and I think it's fair to say a lot less atmosphere in the stadium tonight, with no away fans to speak of. Well, around a dozen in the away end. We saw England, I was going to say canter to a 2-0 win, but actually Serbia gave us a couple of warnings, didn't they, particularly in the last half hour, George?
Definitely. It became apparent during the game that the Albania goal in Andorra meant that Serbia had to draw this game if they were going to keep their World Cup dream alive, and that was reflected in the fact that basically as soon as Albania went ahead, Serbia then committed men forward for the first time, and they caused us some trouble, which I guess is a bit of a concern. Like, yes, we haven't conceded a single goal in qualifying, but it kind of worries me a bit because we haven't come, it's not as if we completely kept the opposition without chances. And today they had 2 or 3 opportunities, like not massive, like gilt-edged chances, but decent opportunities to equalise, none of which they even really tested Pickford with. But yeah, I mean, this was a pretty run-of-the-mill game. It felt, I would say, more like a friendly than the Wales friendly felt like a friendly from an England perspective. No Serbia fans, as you say, in the stadium to speak of, because seemingly or reportedly their FA didn't sell tickets because of the laser pointing in Serbia that cost the FA £85,000. They don't want to risk the fine again. But good to see a couple of quality England goals from Saka and Eze. Good to see Nico O'Reilly, I think at left back, was a bit of a revelation. It's not a night that's going to live long in the memory, but it's another step forward under Thomas Tuchel.
I think we looked much better when the substitutions came on, and that was partly down to what you've just talked about, in that Serbia did start committing more men forward, and we were able to exploit some of the space and hit them on the counter. But Bellingham, Eze, Foden, even Henderson to an extent, but they all just moved the ball quicker. They were a bit more direct. They were trying to make things happen. Some nice sort of little passing movements, which nearly created a few chances, and then eventually we took advantage of Serbia going forward and hit them on the counter with a lovely sweeping move. Bellingham to Foden, Foden to Eze, first time finish, top corner, a really nice goal. We saw Phil Foden in the 9.5/10.5 position that Tuchel talked about in the press conference. The first thing that he did when coming on in that nominal number 9, false 9 role was collect the ball in his own half off the defence. And there were a few moments where he did find himself in the centre-forward position on the end of crosses or balls in. One of them was like a header, which was a bit behind him from a deep Henderson cross, but sort of did just give you a little insight into what he's really good at and what he's more unfamiliar with, perhaps in that role. But I think all of those subs coming on will be really pleased with their contribution, because they all, Henderson is a different case, but Eze, Bellingham and Foden will all be sweating a little bit on their place in this team, and they've come on and they've made decisive contributions tonight.
I think that's probably a good, as well as Serbia opening things up a bit and them having maybe a bit more space to play into, and the counter-attacking opportunities that Rashford and Saka and Rodgers and Kane didn't necessarily have in the first half, with Serbia keeping men back. But I think it's also because of how well Tuchel has played things, with now the competitiveness that has to be flooding throughout the team, that they came on, players like Foden and Bellingham, among the best players in the world, knowing that in half an hour at home against a game against Serbia where we'd already qualified, they really needed to impress, and every touch mattered. And I think they both played like that, in particular Foden and Bellingham. Bellingham, I was expecting, based on what Tuchel had said about Bellingham's best position and role and best attributes, I was expecting Bellingham to be a little more penetrative in terms of running in behind off Foden. Instead, he was still coming towards the ball quite a lot and dropping quite deep, and I think that's something that might frustrate Tuchel a little bit, but it would be weird to expect him and Foden to suddenly click in a partnership and in a role, for Foden in particular, that's not hugely natural to him. So I'm certainly not overreacting, but it was clear to me that Bellingham was trying his absolute hardest to impact the game literally every single second that he was on the pitch, and I think he did that in some ways, and in other ways he was sometimes trying a bit too hard, and some stuff didn't come off. But I certainly can't fault the commitment and the kind of competitiveness that they all showed off the bench, and that's definitely something that I remember from the game.
It's interesting as well, because I thought we saw Kane drop a lot deeper today than we have done in many other Tuchel games. And I wonder, the personnel is going to change, but it feels like with every passing game we're seeing more and more how the profiles of the players in Tuchel's 4-2-3-1 are basically going to be defined. And almost now the changing personnel, like obviously, you won't get two more different attacking players than Harry Kane and Phil Foden in terms of what they actually do on a football pitch, but the roles they played tonight and the way they played them were broadly pretty similar. Almost the same with Bellingham and Rodgers, where Rodgers often played very, very deep and picked up the ball in deeper areas and was, as he always is, very aggressive out of possession. And I think that my hunch is that Tuchel really likes playing Rodgers alongside Kane, because out of possession tonight, especially in the first half when they were playing deep, it was a 4-4-2. Like Rodgers was playing as high, if not higher, than Kane. But because we know that Kane isn't a great presser, because we know he's not the most mobile, and that has been a massive undoing for England in major tournaments, especially against better teams, is that he just isn't capable of putting the pressure on the centre-backs that we would like. I think Tuchel likes having Rodgers there because he is so good at that. And obviously Bellingham can do that as well, but it's not quite as much his game as it is Rodgers is, who's a very intelligent presser as well as a rabid one. So it's really interesting. We talk about partnerships, and maybe, there seems to be an assumption still that Bellingham is going to walk back into the team as and when the importance of the games ramps up. But I think with the more minutes they played together, my hunch is that Rodgers and Kane are basically striking up a bit of a new school strike partnership.
I wouldn't be surprised if that game tonight is the end of Rodgers starting for England. And you've put forward a good case there, George. One I didn't really consider, and fair play. Like maybe there is some off the ball stuff that's important to Tuchel, but I just felt that when we had those players on the pitch towards the end, it felt right, it looked good, and there's a bit of game state in there, but also the big reaction that Bellingham got when he was brought on, it was notable.
I think you're a bit starry-eyed, Dave. I really do.
I might be.
I'm definitely not getting carried away by that last 25 minutes of, if we're just focusing on Bellingham. He has obviously got some stardust, and he acts like the star player on the team as soon as he comes on the pitch. I'm genuinely still not convinced that is necessarily the best thing for the team as a whole, and I hope that he starts over Rodgers. I do think that Rodgers' quieter, non-starring display tonight opens the door for Bellingham to get a start. On Sunday, Tuchel would have played it perfectly, not bringing him straight back in, rewarding Rodgers for what's come before, not pandering to Bellingham. But now there can't really be much argument for Bellingham starting. And how he and Harry Kane play together, because Kane will start up top, is going to be very, very important for us to watch. Because if Bellingham wants to pick the ball up off of Anderson's toes, and Kane also wants to drop into the centre circle, it is going to feel like Euro 2024 all over again. And that could be quite tricky, I think, to watch again. And I'm hoping that I'm wrong. Bellingham was involved in some great stuff. I want to make that very clear. Some nice combination play, some nice drives forward, quite a few passes that didn't come off. As I say, I think he
terrible shot.
A terrible shot. Again, I'm not. I want to make it clear, I'm not getting overexcited by what I saw from Bellingham tonight. I'm also not judging him harshly on it. I think two things can be true. I don't think this was. I'm not getting starry-eyed, which I'm accusing you of being. But yeah,
I
didn't do anything
really
terribly.
I'm just sort of saying what I think will happen going forward, and it does feel to me there is still a bit of an inevitability about Bellingham. Now Rodgers could easily start on Sunday against Albania. It doesn't mean that one, not even a bad performance, just one performance where he didn't make a decisive contribution in terms of goals or anything. He had one header in the first half which just went past the post, which was a bit unlucky. But I just think that when we get to the World Cup, I think Bellingham will be the holder of that number 10.
If that's true, then I think it's imperative that we see them play together now.
Kane and Bellingham.
Yeah, they played together a lot before, and it hasn't worked a lot before. It's looked okay in qualifying in the past as well. But what Ali mentions there in terms of them both wanting to drop incredibly deep in terms of dictating play, I'm not sure Jude is the kind of player, or Kane is the kind of player where Tuchel can say stop doing that. Jude just stay high and keep making runs in behind. If they're going to be the two that basically, regardless, I think we need to see them play together in this system under Tuchel, looking to press the way that we currently are pressing, because we've got Albania on Sunday, and then we've got a couple of friendlies in March, and then we're into World Cup camp. So there's not long to get these partnerships right.
Yeah, it's funny because it was only, and I say that with inverted commas, it was only 2-0 tonight, and I think we're now getting in the rhythm of watching Tuchel's England and understanding that whether it's 2 or 4 or 5 or 1, as it's been basically all of the scorelines so far, wins to 0. The performances have been broadly similar. Like, I think England's quietest period in the game was the first 10 minutes, and the atmosphere was very, very quiet and flat, and not like a serious sort of rabid, excitable, raucous atmosphere. And Tuchel himself was, to my eyes, quite notably less animated in the dugout. He obviously criticised the atmosphere after the Wales game, and it sort of seemed like he's either decided that that's not a battle that's worth him having, which I would certainly agree with. There's lots of things that go into the poor Wembley atmosphere, and most of them are not the fans are being unreasonable. He was not very animated to start the game, and England started fairly quietly. But from like 10 to 20 minutes, we suddenly strung together some nice passing moves. Saka and Rashford both got on the ball quite a lot in wide areas. Kane in particular was finding them really nicely. I felt like Rashford had one of those games where I honestly feel like I've seen him play the same game 3 times now, or maybe even 4 for Tuchel's England, where you can't really fault almost anything that he's doing, but the final action, for whatever reason, just not only doesn't come off, but quite often doesn't even really look like it's going to, if that makes sense. He sort of runs out of room, or he's moved his feet too quickly, and he loses control of the ball. He's obviously, they're all trying really, really hard, because in his absence, Gordon played so well, Dave, and Eze comes off the bench and bends one into the top corner from the left-hand side of the attack. So that left wing position is still pretty fascinating.
And I think that was an important display from Eze tonight off the bench, because scored a really good goal, doing something that we didn't see from Rashford, and that was taking the ball first time confidently and putting it in the top corner. Rashford on a few times tonight, there were moments where he could have put the cross in or had a shot first time, takes an extra touch, tries to come inside and gets crowded out. A nice bit of skill over on the touchline, nutmegs a player but overhits it, and then the defender clears it. There was a moment where we broke through towards the end, right at the end of the first half, and he did really well to get in behind, showed good pace, good strength to get the ball, but then just overhit his pass to Rice. And there was just, every time he had an opportunity to do something decisive, he didn't execute it well. And that is exactly the thing that Tuchel talked about recently when asked about Rashford. Said that, he's clearly, Jack Pitt-Brooke in the Athletic Day was writing and described Rashford as a passion project for Tuchel, which I think is true. Like from the first press conference and the first squad that we had with Tuchel, he talked about Rashford and talked about wanting him to be at his best and how much he believes in him. But recently he did say he has got to do more. He's got to score more goals. He's got to assist more goals. He's got to affect games more decisively. And tonight he didn't do that. And the sub that came on to replace him did exactly that.
It was a massive opportunity for Rashford tonight with Gordon injured. Like, it really presented him the opportunity at home, against a side that he was able to get on the ball in a lot of advanced areas to really kind of stake a claim after seeing what Gordon did in the last break. And he didn't really take that. As Ali says, you can't criticise him too much, but nothing really came off for him. And then Eze came off the bench and a lot came off for him. He nearly scored a couple of goals before he got the one that he got. He looked really polished in possession, looked really lively. The finish for the goal was absolutely sensational. He made it look like a tap-in, and it was a bent strike from just outside the area to the top right-hand corner. And I assume that Eze will get a chance from the start on Sunday, you would think. I think he'll would feel aggrieved if he doesn't get that opportunity. An interesting thing in the first half, I thought, was Jordan Pickford going down after 22 and a half minutes and getting some treatment. And then after about a minute, it turned out he was absolutely fine. And in that minute, Thomas Tuchel called over all the players, as had Vajko Paunovic, of course, the Serbia manager, and they had a little meeting. And it came at a moment where I thought we were quite flat. Nothing was really coming off. And even though Tuchel might not have been as animated on the sidelines as he might have been in the Wales game, that to me was suggested that he was thinking, this is not good enough. I want to get them in and I want to have a chat here because we aren't up to the standards. And then we scored, 3 minutes later? Yeah. So I don't love that new fad in football of keepers going down to buy time, but it was interesting that was something that Tuchel was happy to use in what was for England a dead rubber at Wembley against Serbia in order to try and get the players in and get a bit of an uptick in performance.
And I think we should always try to, and do try to, but maybe I'd like to try a bit more to mark England debuts and talk about the people who are making them. It's an incredible achievement to make an appearance for England, and I expect that we will see Nico O'Reilly make quite a few more. It was a really assured performance from him at left back. I'd say the things that were most notable for me, three things really. One, as I expected, a lot of comfort and confidence on the ball in tight areas, a bit of passing and movement. Not incredibly progressive, but tidy and making the right passes in the main when needed. Didn't show too many nerves, I think, once he settled into his rhythm. The second thing that really stood out was he was still playing, to my eyes, at full capacity in the last few minutes of the game, which, from a physical standpoint, during a season where he is suddenly starting basically every single game for Man City, having only ever played, a year ago he was playing in the EFL Trophy for their under-21s and losing 5-0 against Lincoln this week 1 year ago. And so for him to not only complete 90 minutes, but to my eyes look like one of the sort of fittest players on the pitch, is a really good sign in his position. He used his body really nicely when he was under pressure, buying fouls and shielding the ball when he was under pressure, which is great. And then lastly, the chances that Serbia had in the second half, I think, exclusively came down Reece James's side. And there could be tactical reasons for that. James was pushing up a bit higher in possession and O'Reilly was mainly holding his position. And so maybe there was more space in behind James. But, he looked like he was pulling a bus a little bit at times with the Serbian attacker down the left, getting the better of him quite a lot. But again, I don't remember O'Reilly putting a foot wrong defensively either. And so for what I perceive Tuchel wants from his fullbacks, it was about as good as a display as we could possibly have hoped for.
And the first goal came from him taking on a shot as well, being confident enough to have a shot when the ball came to him outside the box, ricocheted off a couple of Serbian defenders, pops up for Saka, who plants it with a nice first-time finish. On the replay, actually, looks like he shinned it a bit, but that almost made it kind of go straight rather than sort of curl, and it went, nicely into the corner. I was impressed. I've never seen O'Reilly play before in the flesh, and I hadn't quite realised how tall he was. He's actually for a fullback, he's quite a big lad. And I suppose he's not always been a left back, has he? He's been a midfielder coming up through the ranks and stuff, and obviously playing for Man City. Maybe he one day will move similar to Miles Lewis-Skelly. People think of that in him as well. Maybe he'll become a midfielder or something one day. But right now, he looks tidy, and left back is one of those spots that is also up for grabs, along with left wing, along with number 10, and maybe the centre back next to John Stones. Those are the four positions really in terms of England's first choice starting 11, where you're not sure at the moment. All the rest of it is pretty locked down, and Saka scoring again tonight kind of just firms up his case if he needed to at all. He's so reliable for England when he does play. Had a bit of an disrupted last year for us post the Euros, really, in terms of his minutes on the pitch and stuff, because of injuries at bad times and stuff. But when he does play, I'd be interested to see what his minutes per goal contribution is. I bet it's pretty high.
I love the fact that quite early on he cut in from the right, sort of edge of the box, and curled it quite high and wide. It's the exact same position he scored from against Wales. And I was genuinely I felt a bit angry and disappointed that it hadn't gone in the top corner, and then just had that moment of being like, how absurd is that 5 minutes in I'm expecting him to stick one in the top corner. But those are the levels that he's kind of set for himself. And it's so good to have him back starting games, because as we touched on maybe in 2 camps ago, it actually had been quite a while since Saka had played a run of starts for England. And we didn't need reminding, but it's nice to see just how good he is, and particularly when it comes to goal output. In a major tournament, you want to know that you can get goals from, for us, Kane, Bellingham, the wide forwards. Obviously, we're unlikely to get too many from our midfielders. That's not really their role necessarily. And obviously, we want a sprinkling from set pieces as well. And we started pretty slowly from the set piece point of view under Tuchel, but I think we've been looking a bit more dangerous. Obviously, the first goal comes from broadly a sort of second phase of the set piece.
A lot of overhit corners tonight.
Yeah, there were some not such good deliveries, and there was a lot of There were a couple of headers, one from Konza at the back post, one from Kane at the back post, and there were a couple of shots as well, definitely one from Rashford in the first half and one from Saka that got blocked, where it looked like just the greasiness of the pitch, the wetness of the pitch, I genuinely think was having quite a big impact.
It was a wet night tonight, for sure.
George, you got to see, 7 minutes of Adam Wharton, and it was very sweet to see how excited you were, having initially been frustrated as his extended warm-up with the quadruple sub that came on. He was the one that was told to sit back down, and you were a bit sad about that.
I just didn't know if we needed to see another half an hour of Hendo. I think we know what he offers, we know what he does. I think Wharton probably deserved longer on the pitch, but it was good to see him get on.
He starts on Sunday.
I'd kind of be surprised, I think. I think if anyone starts instead of Rice and...
Another good game from Anderson.
Yeah, really good game. He's so good. There's no... Anderson rightly has that role sewn up for the moment. It's just a case of...
well tonight.
We've got... when Henderson came on, he moved into the Rice role and Henderson sat deeper. But again, he's another one that I'd like to get some minutes into his legs before the World Cup. So I think he'll have a part to play. He came on today. His first touch was loose, but after that he was really polished. There was one move he set up, but in like classic Wharton fashion, where he received the ball into feet with his back to goal and played like a hook pass. Where I have no idea. He knew that Bellingham was there, but it was like played perfectly through, and it set us away. And it's what he does just so well. His weighted pass, his vision is just different level. And I would love to see him. I said it to you guys during the game where we've seen so many players struggle playing centre midfield for England, and Elliot Anderson is doing it incredibly well. So this is no slight on him at all, but it does look like a fun role to play if you're that kind of player where you are just getting the ball the whole time and you're getting the ball in space the whole time, and therefore it's giving the opportunity for those kind of players to showcase what they can do, and Elliot Anderson is doing that 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
I'd love to see Wharton given the opportunity to do that for 60, 70 minutes in Albania on Sunday, but I have a feeling we won't.
One more player I think we should talk about before we finish, and that is the other centre-back tonight next to John Stones. That was Ezri Konza. Gahey obviously had to pull out of the squad because he's injured at the moment, but it does still seem to be between Konza and Gahey for that second spot, because I think John Stones is a lock if he's fit. And didn't have loads to do tonight, but on a couple of occasions showed quite good recovery pace to get back in and make blocks and put off Serbian attackers. There was one particularly late on, which I think he got the touch that kind of got it back to Pickford, I think, sort of sliding in. And again, has never looked out of place when playing for England, really, at all, especially under Tuchel. So has done himself, no harm at all tonight.
Mate, I mean, has never looked out of place, I think can be upgraded to has been basically impeccable for as long as I can remember in an England shirt, which is really great to say, and it's probably boring that I always bang on about it, but it's just funny to me that literally just because he plays for Aston Villa rather than Manchester City, there'll always be a certain, even unspoken idea that he's not as good as John Stones, or he's really, not as good as someone might be able to be. And to me, I just look at what he does, and it is constantly and consistently excellent, both defensively and on the ball. And I think we're really, really lucky to have him. And I think right now I'm happy for him to be above Gahey in the pecking order, but understanding that Gahey, you could say pretty similar stuff about his performances in an England shirt as well. And I think a lot of what we talk about on the pod right now leads me to thinking that we're in a really good spot. I think we were a little concerned, I think it's fair to say, and we've lots to talk about when Tuchel was appointed, whether it was right from a football point of view, from a number of different points of view. We worried about what might change under Southgate, whether he would try and change too much, whether his idea of playing club football at international level was a bit naive. I don't think these are all answered based on a qualifying campaign where we've won every game to 0 and we haven't played any, top 10, top 15 ranked opposition. But we're all feeling a lot more secure, and I think that's really, really positive. And as I always say, our big issues or our big talking points are all really nice problems to have. They're basically is this player that's amazing slightly better or slightly worse than another player that's also amazing? Character-wise, the team seems pretty good, and I think there's just a lot to like at the moment. So we're feeling pretty good. Albania on Sunday at 5 o'clock. I'd be interested to see if Tuchel makes any changes. I find his team selection has been fascinating throughout, for me anyway, and now we're at the point where it's our last game until March. I'm sure he'd love to finish the qualifying campaign with an 8th consecutive win to 0, but it is an opportunity perhaps to see Bellingham play with Kane. It is maybe an opportunity for Ebere to start on the left. I wonder what will happen on the right of the attack with Saka. Will he keep his place, or will Bowen get a chance? Like, how many chances will he give, and how much will he just go, I'm sorry, I've got a starting 11, and where possible I want to allow them to kind of keep developing their partnerships with, as we keep saying, only 270 minutes until the first warm-up games, and 270 minutes of football until the squad is announced.
Do you know what my favourite moment of tonight was?
No, I don't.
So we...
Pre-match curry?
It was all right. I wouldn't say it was my favourite moment of the night, but it was a perfectly
Half-time cookies?
serviceable curry. I had 2 cookies at half-time, which was, on reflection, a bit much. The last few bites of the second cookie were a bit too rich. But no, in the first half, we were lucky enough to be sitting in the press box tonight at Wembley again, and George momentarily forgot that he was in a professional working environment, surrounded by the great and good of the journalists, of football journalists of the nation, and indeed other nations as well, and loudly appealed for a penalty at one stage, and then sort of realised where he was, and then put his head down and sort of apologised, which was nice to see.
Really subtle reaction to a good incident. Okay. Yes, well, thank you for listening, and please subscribe if you're watching on YouTube to the YouTube channel, and drop a like and a comment on the video if there's anything you'd like us to expand on the recap show after the Albania game. That'll probably be out on Monday. Thank you to everyone that came and said hi to us at the Globe in Baker Street pre-match, where we had a good time. So thank you. We'll love to do more of those for the March international friendlies.
We won't be at the Volley this Sunday. I think it's important to mention that. But we have heard of a few people who are interested in going. So by all means, get down there.
Yeah.
Enjoy it with each other.
100%.
You don't need us. We can set you free. But we will not be at the Volley this Sunday. But we will endeavour to be there in future weeks. Yeah.
If you're listening on Spotify, please do drop us a 5-star rating. Makes a big difference to us. And of course, make sure you subscribe to the feed as well. And we'll be back on Monday to deliver another Campman Award and break down the game against Albania, which I'm sure will be high-octane stuff. They've already secured their playoff spot. We're already heading to North America in 2026. It's going to be one big party. Cheers. Come on, England. Go well.